It's Friday, which means it's time to deploy. This is the show where we talk about the news and tech-related events related to Octopus deploying CodeFresh. Jim, as always, is joining me. How was your week, Jim?
Yeah, good week this week. Just trying to think back, you always get to Friday and it's just like a blur by this stage, right? So who knows what happened? Maybe I had a terrible week.
Just look at my
What
Git
about you?
commits. There you go. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So we've got a bit of news to talk about today. So the first thing that I want to talk about is not the CD Foundation, although we are a member. The CD Foundation publishes a report on a yearly basis. This is in conjunction with Slashdata, and they have a new CI/CD report for 2024, which is awesome. This is their 5th edition, and this is where you can get the report. This is what it looks like, and I thought I'd just go through some of the highlights of the report itself. The summary is here, but you can take a look at the individual highlights itself. So here's the report, and if we take a look, you can see we're a member. So hooray, there we are, amongst others. And then on page 7 of the report, they list the key insights. And the ones that I wanted to just draw your attention to, and maybe you could give me what you think about this, is that generally speaking, if you're using more DevOps technologies, you tend to have a stronger likelihood of being a top performer. So that's what this bullet point here mentions here. So there's a strong correlation between the number of DevOps technologies used by developers and their likelihood of being a top performer across all 3 performance metrics tracked. And we'll get into what those metrics tracks are. But generally speaking, the general consensus around this report is that you should be doing automation. You should be trying to do your best around CI/CD. But if we take a look at the individual aspects of this particular metric, so what you see here are 3 metrics that are tracked. So code lead time for changes against the number of DevOps technology used, deployment frequency against the number of DevOps technologies used, and time to restore service against the number of DevOps technologies used. So on the y-axis, the x-axis, as you go from left to right, more technologies are used. And then the y-axis here for this chart means, red means more than once per day, more than 1 month, or less than 1 day in terms of code changes. For deployment frequency, red is less frequently than once a month. You get the idea. So basically reading out the chart here. But as you go from left to right, you'll notice that we see an improvement if you're actually doing what you should be doing relative to CI/CD, which is multiple deployments, often and early, etc., and you're using more technologies.
Yeah, it's a funny graph to get your head around. I'm trying to work. I'm wondering what they mean by more technologies, because when I think, all right, my pipeline's now got more technologies in it, I go, oh no, that's going to be harder to manage. Like if you've got scripts hooked up to other scripts, so maybe it's like platforms or something like that.
Well, I would imagine. So the question here is, which of the following technologies have you used as part of your development activities in the last 12 months?
More parts of the process you're using technology for rather than manual.
Yeah, and I think they're probably listing a bunch of different technologies. So it's like, are you using source control? Are you implementing unit tests? Do you have observability? Are you doing automated deployments? I mean, I've listed 4 so far, but I mean, you could think, everyone's going to check a ton, and they find that when they do that and they're doing right by their deployment strategy and other strategies, they tend to see better performance relative to that. So the follow-on question is, on average, how long does it take you to go from code committing to code successfully running production, blah, 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 blah. So there's some strong correlation there, which I thought was interesting. It's a good supporting evidence for using tools like Octopus Deploy and others, if you're so inclined.
Can't do that.
I know. I would say that our experience relative to Octopus is somewhat similar. We use Octopus to basically dog food Octopus, et cetera, et cetera. But anyways, you can take a look at the report. It's quite detailed and good justification for spending money on tools, I think. If you're not a business decision maker, if you're a developer and you're looking to procure some tools and you want to have a strong business case, this is a new report that you can cite. This is from the CD Foundation, which is at cd.foundation. And yes, that is a TLD. As it says here, it was created by Slashdata and the CD Foundation, which we are a part of. Awesome. This is a blog post from Michelle O'Brien, a member of the product team, entitled OpenID Connect, in Octopus Deploy. So this is a summary of what we talked about historically here on Deploy on Friday about all the support we have for OpenID Connect. So OIDC, or OpenID Connect, is a way in which you can get server-to-server authentication via a variety of mechanisms, primarily JSON, auth tokens, etc. And it allows you to establish these kind of pseudo trust chains between servers. So an example might be if we want to have a trust chain between Octopus Deploy and GitHub, so that we don't have to have API keys floating around. We can just have them talk to each other seamlessly almost. OpenID Connect is a way in which you can do that. And the way in which we've done this in Octopus is through two mechanisms. So first, Octopus as a client. So during a deployment, you can authenticate Octopus with Azure and with AWS using OIDC. So that's nice. And then Octopus as a resource server. So that's a taxonomy or definition or term defined in the OpenID Connect spec, as it basically allows you to become an OIDC provider, letting clients like GitHub Actions authenticate with Octopus as trusted providers. So the idea here is that on the left we have GitHub, on the right, or in the middle we have Octopus Deploy, and then on the right we have our cloud providers. And so you have communication occurring from left to right and right to left. And OpenID Connect allows you to facilitate that using JSON Web Tokens, as I mentioned before, and you establish these sort of chains of trust. And the reason why this is nice is because you don't have API keys floating around like we've had historically. They don't expire. You establish these ahead of time, and they just work. And so there's no handshaking going on relative to that. There's no risk of your leaking API keys, despite the fact, the thing about that is if you accidentally check in code that has an API key into it, especially with GitHub, it will notify you, it will revoke that check-in and invalidate the API key automatically. I don't know if you were aware of that, but that's something that we actually do with GitHub. So.
Yeah, I was aware of that.
Ask me how I know that, because I've done it.
Show me the man that has not committed production keys to GitHub, and
to a public
I'll
repo.
show you a man
That's right.
that has not lived.
Yes. That's really good. I like that a lot. That's funny. So to set this up as a client, Michelle goes through the steps of how to set this up, and when adding Azure or AWS auth or subscription basically, and so you provide the GUID, and then you set up as the auth method, and then from there you can establish the chain of trust. And she goes into the details of like why you should use OIDC over other auth methods, and removes the need to store and rotate secrets, lets you control access to Octopus from within Azure, which is nice. Using a subject identifier, which is kind of like a hint. It's sort of like a saying like, subject identifiers are kind of like the LDAP subject identifiers. It's sort of like a hint of like, this is what this is, etc. You can enforce each authentication account to include spaces, environments, tenants, projects, and runbooks in the subject claim. So it's very similar to the way in which LDAP works in that sense. It's all protocol specific really, but you don't need to worry about it. But looking at an example here, here's the subject identifier. So you can see space, default, environment, prod, account, OIDC, test. And so you can specify those in a similar manner. And those are your federated credentials as listed as part of this. And this is in Azure here. So there you go.
We had one of these two parts until recently, and now we've got the other part. Is that what's been happening?
Yeah, we basically, this virtuous circuit, if you will, of going from GitHub to Octopus to Azure and back is now fully realized, because Octopus is not only a client to outbound, meaning it can talk to remotes like Azure and AWS using JSON Web Tokens and using OIDC, but also going back. That is, okay, now Octopus wants to become a resource server to GitHub. And so GitHub can now connect to Octopus Deploy. So it's that sort of, how we talk about like pipelines and shift left and blah, 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 blah. Like it's all about, making it easier and facilitating those trust chains, if you will, between servers. That's the whole purpose of OpenID Connect, is to establish trusts between servers, essentially. It's pretty graphic, explains it all. So there you go. So GitHub Action seeks to authenticate with Octopus using a JSON Web Token, and then it returns and it says, yep, here's your access token granted. GitHub Actions completes action using short-lived credentials. But you pre-initialize that by giving the GUID that it's sort of like a shared secret ahead of time, and then there's these sort of tokens that are issued as opposed to keys. So it allows you to do those sort of operations.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thanks, Michelle, for that post. Really kind of summarizes what we've got available in Octopus Deploy. moving right along, some community stuff. We've recently been in South Africa. We were visiting with the Standard Bank Group down there. So there's Adam Close and Andy's in there, and a few others as well. This is cool to see, like, when folks are on the road and visiting with customers and clients, which is great. This was up on LinkedIn, so we decided to reshare that. That's awesome. Always great to see customers. Another event that we were at. Yeah, I know. So Martin and friends, so Leanne and Naveed and Mark were in London, and we were at the Redgate Summit. This was a recent event that we did, and we printed out some posters. We had some really cool stickers, some which you may see at a future event. So we printed out some new designs. So they were there talking about database deployments, which was cool. Mark even posted a little bit about here at the Redgate Summit. We were a part of this as well in London. So a lot of folks were asking questions about databases and like, hey, we can help deploy. So there you go. So Mark was talking about that. Colin posted recently that he's been awarded the distinct title of a CNCF or CDF ambassador. So this is awesome. So the Continuous Delivery Foundation, the one that we just talked about with the state of CI/CD, actually has an ambassador program, and Colin's been talking a lot about continuous delivery and continuous deployment and all that sort of stuff. And so this year he's been awarded the distinct title of a CDF ambassador, which is awesome. And so yeah, lots of stuff happening in this space. We've got a lot of folks on the road who are doing this, and so this is awesome. So congrats to Colin. That's great. Moving right along, we've had some folks over in Seattle. We were at GitOps Con. There's Bob and Costas there with the CodeFresh booth, giving the old thumbs up there. And there's Sean and Alex and Bob. So we were all there talking to customers about GitOps and GitOps Con. There's Jenny. And there's Ships in the back. So yeah, that's just awesome to see. We were talking a lot about CodeFresh and our platform there. And then Alex and Bob and Ships were, I don't know what's going down here in the corner. I guess there was Dance Revolution. So Bob did his presentation, Lessons Learned, Building a Deployment Process for 100 plus developers. Bob actually recently did this video, or rather this talk for a webinar, which you can find on our webinar site, octopus.com/webinars. So that's great. And his GIFs were working, unlike our webinars. So there you go. Speaking of webinars, we actually have a webinar next week. We've got Bob and Kit talking about Kubernetes CD at scale. So you can register for this. This is available up on our website at octopus.com/webinars. There you'll find the listing for this. We've posted a lot about this. So this is going to be a great event. We've got over 100 people registered for this already. This is based on our white paper as well, which is available also on our website. So go ahead and check that out. More posts from Bob and Alex and Ships. So some selfies always make things better. There's the dinner that we saw earlier as well, and our cool stickers that we have going on there. If it's not in Git, it's just a rumor. Helm yeah. So yeah, we got some cool stickers. I like it. More community stuff. There's Alex with the Argo neon sign that we have. This is at the convention center in Seattle. I don't know if you've been there, but yeah. This is a typical Seattle day, rainy in April. So there you go. This was a article written by Steve Fenton for the New Stack entitled GitOps Makes the Great DevX, but Pragmatism Matters. So this is a carry forward or carry on of the sort of kind of questions that we asked folks over at KubeCon Paris. We talked about this briefly in previous episodes of Deploy on Friday. We were at KubeCon. And so Steve goes into some of the questions that we asked folks, and he's making basically, the case for the fact that, GitOps itself can have some challenges associated with it. So GitOps is this idea that you're using Git as the sort of source of truth. And as a result, people are using it in conjunction with like Kubernetes for deployments. The problem with that, it's not so much a problem, but you just have to realize, like, when you start doing a lot of deployments and you're doing this at scale with GitOps, where you're checking in changes to YAML files, etc., the amount of YAML files, the amount of branches you start creating can get a little bit out of control. And so you've got to be careful about that in particular. So a bit of the article there, just presenting the sort of pros and cons there of some of the observations that we made. And so when thinking about developer productivity and a good developer experience, this is something that Steve goes into. So definitely worth checking out there if you're all interested. Anyways, if you happen to catch this video as you're just browsing through YouTube, etc., feel free to like and subscribe. We'll see you next week on Deploy on Friday. Take care, everyone, and happy deployments.